Hey everyone, my name is George Calais, and I'm from The Block, which is a research, data, and media firm within the crypto and digital asset space. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of crypto and where we see things heading in Q4 2021. So the two main things I'm going to focus on are just the growing competition within the smart contract space and some of the developments there, and then some of the applications actually built on top of these platforms, primarily DeFi and NFTs. But taking a step back, it's worth noting just the size to which the crypto market's grown in the past year or so. Right now, I believe at time of recording, we're at around $2.4 trillion of total market cap across crypto assets. Personally, I see a lot of this growth just being driven by the sheer number of different cryptos on the market right now, with surges. You know, we're probably just off all-time highs on, Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the better known ones, but strong growth in some of the kind of emergent smart contract platforms as well. But before we get there, it's worth noting that Bitcoin still dominates around 43% of the market. And some of the trends there, while hash rate took a little bit of a dip in the early summer, um, interesting metrics around Lightning recently, and kind of renewed momentum around sort of this trend of governments using Bitcoin, while kind of the El Salvador experiment has been mixed with both people excited about it, but also kind of challenges with on the ground implementation and political realities. There's still strong momentum, at least from an institutional side, on custodying Bitcoin. But really, kind of the story over the past year and a half has been just market interest in Ethereum, DeFi, and then some of the other DeFi ecosystems on other smart contract platforms. So when we say kind of these different ecosystems, what we're talking about is just at a high level, um, you know, on top of these layer one smart contract platforms, these are kind of the Ethereums of the world, but also Algorand, Solana, which recently had a big surge, Avalanche, which got white hot in August, Polkadot and its parachains. There are these other kind of smart contract platforms that compete kind of from a scalability and cost standpoint. And then kind of on top of these networks, you actually have applications, whether they're kind of DeFi, which are most of the apps kind of listed here. And then you have kind of other stable coins, NFTs, native tokens that are used to pay like gas and fees that actually kind of sit on top of these smart contract platforms. So, we mentioned that Ethereum is, there are more competitors in the smart contract space, but to understand why, you really have to think about like what a blockchain platform solves for. So really kind of there are three things always in tension. There's decentralization, which is just like how many nodes have control over the network. And there are different ways of measuring actually the influence of a node, but we can leave it at that for now. Security, and then scalability, which is both kind of how much volume it can handle, and then the associated costs with that volume. And just in its current state, given all of the network activity, it's become very apparent just the limited scalability in Ethereum. Ethereum's highly decentralized, highly secure, but it just costs a lot, sometimes up to like $100 more. It can be like $250 in gas if there's a popular NFT mint going on. And so there has been room lately for other blockchains that just make different trade-offs to compete in that smart contract space. A lot of what's kind of interesting to note about this competition is a lot of it is actually spurred by the foundations of these other smart contract platforms actually kind of launching incentive programs. So Avalanche, Phantom, Algorithm, have all kind of launched these different incentives programs where basically they fund the ecosystem. And these can be up towards like the hundreds of millions. And so what's kind of interesting also is while kind of there's been a I would say like more development at that layer one level. So other smart contract platforms. Ethereum, has its own market driven solutions in what's kind of known in the industry as layer twos, which are basically ways of sharding out the Ethereum blockchain just to make it more scalable so transactions can be parallelized. I would say kind of while Polygon and which is kind of an example of plasma technology, got like a really early lead, and there was hype around the Matic token kind of early on. And people, there are a lot of people who are really bullish about Starkware, um, which is more of a validity proof. I would say kind of recently there's been a surge in just total value locked on some of these optimistic rollups. So recently, Arbitrum and Optimism are both in beta and have seen a lot of traction and basically are ways to kind of scale out this Ethereum ecosystem. So while I mentioned kind of there's a growing trend towards alternative ecosystems for DeFi and NFTs, which each have their kind of own nuance and trade-offs, Ethereum still dominates. And you can just see this in the value locked on smart contract platforms. Of course, some of these other platforms are growing at a fast rate, but Ethereum just still definitely has the highest value locked. It has the most sought after and prestigious NFTs, and it's just the most liquid from a DeFi perspective. And so, as a result, I tend to, people like to call these other smart contract platforms ETH killers. I think if anything, they just show that there's so much demand for smart contract platforms that Ethereum is still able to dominate. Fees are still rising, even in the face of additional platforms filling kind of other market gaps. And so, we mentioned some of these applications, but like it's really interesting to look at like what they actually are. So within DeFi, I would say kind of the most DeFi refers to decentralized finance, which is just basically the industry term for kind of open source protocols that are composable, meaning they can build on each other, and permissionless, meaning anyone can access. And they can kind of facilitate really a wide array of financial scenarios. The most value locked right now is on some of these exchanges. You'll hear the term DEX or automated market maker, which is kind of a crypto native way of funding a on-chain asset swap. And then also credit and lending is kind of the next big one with Compound and Maker, which are kind of the largest like traditional lending platforms, and then Aave, which has introduced kind of this concept of no collateral flash loans, which is a really interesting kind of blockchain native application. And on the NFT front, really, I would say we saw an explosion over the past couple months. There was sort of this mini NFT bubble in around February when a lot of these Beeple, one of ones were going hitting the market, and that's when Beeple had his first 5,000 days compilation that hit the market. But you really saw a lull in NFTs kind of in I would say kind of like late spring, early summer. But then particularly like a lot of those PFP projects really took off in, I would say, kind of early summer. And then, you've just seen an explosion of new projects over the past like couple months. And what's really kind of been part of this growth, I would say, of course, PFPs are still, I would say, the most dominant category of NFT, but or some of these like gaming and metaverse plays, which are gaining steam and really interesting. And now, I would say as of kind of last week, almost every NFT you see now is like has some component of a future unlock or some metaverse like functionality, which is really cool. And then where are these being traded? Well, on Ethereum, pretty much all of it's on OpenSea. There are also kind of these, OpenSea is an example of like an open platform where anyone can buy and list, but there are also these more niche marketplaces for, artists who kind of want to be in a curated environment. Super Rare and I would say Art Blocks is like a really interesting example of that. Okay, so what do we see? Um, So I'm actually going to start from the bottom here because we just talked about NFTs. And another thing I see with NFTs that's really interesting is kind of this concept of fractionalization and also DAOs, which are just kind of collective, decentralized bodies on the blockchain buying NFTs. And the reason you see that is NFTs are really expensive now. And the nature of a non-fungible token means there's one owner. But just using some of these on-chain protocols, we can start to think about well, how do you actually like break that up and maybe issue shares of an NFT? How do you stake NFT as collateral? So there are all these like interesting financial applications that are being built on top of that, and I think that's going to continue to be a trend. Um, I guess with proof of work and mining, this is something we've been hearing a lot from institutions who actually seriously want to get more active with crypto, but just particularly kind of on the proof of work front, they're still working through concerns of how to kind of rationalize their decisions in the context of some of those metrics. I would say, on point two, with the development of the Ethereum blockchain, you see these rollups, which are an interesting market solution. You also see kind of continual upgrades. One would be the London hard fork and EIP 1559, which just kind of changed fee structures. But also, we're in the middle of a transition towards ETH2, which would be transitioning Ethereum to a proof of stake, which is kind of similar to what all these other smart contract platforms that are a bit newer look like. And then kind of the last thing I want to leave with you guys is regulators are picking up attention of this space. We saw in the infrastructure bill, they kind of tried to slip something in about crypto, and while a lot of industry participants thought we didn't get our way, the silver lining there was it really showed that there is a force that is fighting for crypto and lobbying for crypto on Capitol Hill, and we're starting to see that. But we're also seeing increasing pressure from the SEC, from regional regulators who are starting to look at a lot of products that do look and feel like securities, and trying to create frameworks for what that may look like. So we're trying to keep a really close eye on that as well. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll be hanging around on the chat and more broadly in the conference. So feel free to ping me.